and I currently work for a fertilizer company called Israeli Chemical Limited. They specialize in production of fertilizers, both commodity fertilizers and specialty fertilizer. I'm the senior agronomist for ICL, covering East Africa. I offer technical expertise and technical expertise to our clients and other customers.
Gabriel? So we seem to have lost Gabriel. Maybe we can proceed by starting with our sessions today. So our first session is going to be with Lillian Budia, who's going to take us through the inputs section of fertilizer so that we can be able to understand what it takes to actually have a good fertilizer product, you know, and be able to grow a good crop. So the floor is yours, Lillian.
Thank you, Nekes. Sorry, I got disconnected for a minute there. So today I'm going to talk about basics of fertilizers. And to help me do that, I'm going to share, I prepared some slides that I can share with you. I'm just putting them on. Okay, let me know if you can see the slides. Hello?
Yeah, I'm back.
Hello?
Yeah, Lillian, we can hear you.
Oh, you can hear me? Okay,
Yeah.
I just wanted you to confirm that you can see the slides. Okay, so if you can hear me and you can see the slides?
Not yet.
Can you see the, you're not seeing the slides? Teresa?
No, I can't be able to view the slides.
You have shared? Lillian, you're on mute, I think.
Wi-Fi keeps just disconnecting. I hope this time it will work. Let me share again. Are you able to see the slides this time?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you. So as I said, I'm going to briefly talk about fertilizer basics. Fertilizers and soils are it's a very wide topic. There's a lot to talk about. So I have really summarized what I'm going to talk about. So just to start us off, today we're talking about inputs in general and crop productivity and how we can increase that. So there are various factors that are important when it comes to productivity. And that is, of course, nutrients, water, temperature, pests, and the seed variety. And crop productivity is going to be affected by the limiting factor among all those many factors. So for example, if you have the best variety, but you don't have the good fertilization practice, then you're not going to achieve your potential. Or if you are limited maybe by pests, then again, you're not going to achieve your potential. So let me now focus on plant nutrients. So crops need a lot to be able to grow in terms of nutrients. They need up to about 14 nutrients that come from the soil and fertilizers. And luckily, a major part of the nutrients they need, hydrogen, oxygen, and carbon dioxide, are free, and of course, sunlight. Now, all these nutrients, all the 14 nutrients, are essential nutrients in the fact that without if one of the nutrient misses, the plant will not be able to complete its life cycle. And therefore, it's important when you're doing fertilizer, when you're growing crops, that you ensure that at least you know that your soil or your growing media is able to supply all the nutrients. And nutrients generally are classified into macro and micro. The macro are the nutrients that are needed in large amounts. The micro are needed in very, very small amounts, but are also very vital. Now, this slide, I just want to show the importance of the primary nutrients, the nitrogen, the phosphorus, and the potassium. Experiment that was done in control, in a control experiment, the soil was inert. So what they added was, in one plot, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. In the next, they didn't add anything, and you can see the difference. You can see that the maize at the forefront is affected and cannot complete its life cycle because it doesn't have the nutrients. Now, the next slide basically just shows the value of micronutrients. A lot of people, especially in Kenya, don't really understand the value of micronutrients when it comes to fertilization, especially the small-scale farmers. So this is another controlled experiment done again on inert soil. That means the soils didn't have nutrients beforehand. So the first on the left is where nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium was added. You can see there's some crop growth. But then when you come in and add in the other nutrients, the trace elements together with the macronutrients, you can see the huge difference. On the extreme right, you see no crop because there is no nutrients added. Now, a very key thing when it comes to fertilization is balanced fertilization. And I think if we come out of this with for plants to also have a balanced diet, in the same way as human beings that we need a balanced diet, the ugali, the carbohydrates, the skuma, and all those things, in the same way, plants need balanced diet, of course, in different
Lillian, we seem to have a problem on Lillian's side.
I seem to have very poor connection. So like I was saying, it's very important for you to make sure that you do what is called balanced fertilization and ensure that your crops are able to get a supply of all nutrients that they need for their growth. Now, when it comes, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Okay, just confirming so that I'm not talking to myself. Now, when it comes to basics of fertilizer recommendations, one of the things, there are several basic things that you need to know. One, you need to know your crop needs in terms of nutrient demand for your expected yield. So you have to start with, okay, this is a crop I'm growing, this is the expected yield I need. And then from that, you need to know what are the nutrients that are needed in what levels. You also need to know for your crop, what are the special requirements in terms of pH and any other critical micronutrients that your particular crop may need. You also need to know your soil or your growing substrate, what is soil analysis and all, and fertilizer recommendation for you to do a soil analysis and also to have a basic understanding of the different nutrient dynamics, because that will then inform which nutrient you'll apply when and the timing of fertilization. And then after you have figured out those two things, then you can now come and determine the best fertilizer to use based on what is available in the market and based on the method of fertilization you'll be doing, whether you're doing basal fertilization or if you're doing fertigation, that is supplying your nutrients with irrigation. And there are 4 key things that you need to keep in mind: the rate, the timing, the placement, and this. A good fertilizer program will take into account the plant nutrient uptake, the soil, and I've put in brackets tissue and irrigation solution composition. If you're able to do that, a lot of large-scale farmers will be doing that, and then the expected return. Now, with this slide, what I wanted to show is mainly that crops have a certain nutrient amount they are able to remove per ton of hectare produced. And this is just a sample from research that has been done over time. So for example, if you look at where I put a circle, for maize, for you to produce a ton of maize, you will need 15 kilograms of nitrogen for the grain alone, and you'll need another 10 kilograms of nitrogen for both the grain and the stover. Now, if you come to our scenario in Kenya, we remove everything. We don't return back the stover. So we'll consider that we need 25 units of nitrogen for maize production per ton of produce. Now, the same thing applies for phosphorus and for potassium and for sulfur. Now, I want to go very slow here because what I'd like to show is what we've been doing over the years to our soils. Now, historically, I come from the maize growing region in Kenya. And historically, we used to supply fertilizer in terms of planting DAP, 1 bag, which I've converted to hectares so that we can be able to do some calculations here. And would top dress with 1 bag of CAN, which is about 120 kilograms of CAN per hectare. Back then, we used to have very good harvests. Would harvest between 30 to 35 bags per acre, which is an equivalent of 7 metric tons per hectare. Now, if you look at these calculations over here, and you look at the crop removal rate, what I'd like us to do is do a simple calculation. Now, based on an average of 7 metric tons per hectare, what amount of nutrients am I removing from soil? So, basically what you I'm sorry, I don't know how long this will last. I hope this is the last time. Calculate the amount of nutrients that you remove based on what the crop needs for that amount of acreage. So for example, I'll go very fast so that in case my network disappears again.
Lillian, you have about 9 minutes to go.
I'm fine. 9 minutes. Nikona, I have enough time then. So I was saying, so now if you calculate here and see that you have, for example, for 7 tons for nitrogen, you will be removing about 175 units of nitrogen to get to that 7 tons of yield per hectare. And that's what we generally used to get, and a lot of people in Kitale used to get. Now let's look at what we are supplying. In terms of supply, we used to apply 1 bag of DAP, which gives you 21 units of nitrogen, and 1 bag of CAN that gives you 32 units of
Sorry, we seem to be losing Lillian. I think there's some internet problems from her end. But I think when she gets back, she'll continue. Maybe we can introduce Gabriel now that you're online. Gabriel, please introduce yourself. Sorry,
thanks.
We missed that start. Yeah.
Sorry, technology issues. I'm a farmer, not a technologist, but thanks, I'm back. Short brief, I'm Gabriel Nyaga. I'm an agronomist by training, studied horticulture, done strategic management, and I've been in agronomy, selling chemicals, agrochemicals throughout, and I'm a farmer as well. So I try to balance both between the farming and the agrochemical bit. So I understand the pain of farmers. So today I'm here to kind of be an in-betweener, advise both on agrochemicals where need be, and advise both where farmers we have issues.
Thank you, Gabby.
Thank you.
We look forward to that discussion. Lillian is back. Sorry, Lillian, we keep losing you. Yeah.
I hope you don't lose me again. I was about to say you guys continue, look for somewhere with better network, but yeah.
Do you think we should move to Robert maybe, and then you can be more settled, and then we can continue?
Yeah, I hope I get somewhere with better network. Yeah.
Okay, I think maybe Robert, you can we can give you this floor just to take
Hello, please
over
do.
on the. Yeah. So Lillian will join us after Robert has spoken. Yeah. Karibu, Robert.
Thank you very much. I tonight have a very unfair advantage of talking about the world of crop protection in 10 minutes. I hope I'll do justice to this. Unfortunately, as you know, in 10 you cannot put that in a PowerPoint. You maybe would lose either the power or the point. So you end up you end up just doing what you can. And so that I don't keep distracting myself, let me just go straight to it. Now, we are addressing an issue of food security, and where crop protection comes in this whole big definition of food security is where we are being asked that we give people access to food that is sufficient and safe and nutritious, that meets their daily dietary needs. Now, in this case, then we are in a catch-22, because on one side, we have to provide sufficient food. And as we know, we don't live in a vacuum. We don't live we don't live in vitro. It's not totally safe and totally controlled. So we grow in condition whereby we face our farmers are faced with pests on a daily basis. And so I'll just go through the process by which we end up placing that safe food on the table, which must be safe and sufficient. So how do we do this? How do I help as a crop protection guy how do I help this to come to fruition? Now, pests. What are pests? Pests, of course, are those organisms that that affect the crop during the normal growing period of the crop, and they are broken into 3 categories. We have the weeds, which are plants that grow where they are not wanted and whose disadvantage by far outweighs the advantages. So, so we have the grass weeds and the broadleaf weeds. You'll allow me to go very quickly through this, because you'll be surprised when I say weeds, and you'd expect that it's a simple thing and everyone would identify with it. But then when you go deeper and you offer a herbicide, you find there are farmers who do not know what to do with it. Even when you tell them it's a grass herbicide. It's a graminicide, it's a herbicide that kills grasses. And so the farmer will end up not using it on onions, because the farmer does not know that onion is not in the grass family, or on carrots, because it's not obvious, it's not you know, that simple that the farmer will identify that carrots, because in their eyes it's looking like it's the same. And I'm talking now with the most simple farming systems that we have in our country. So now we have the weeds, which I've said they're grass weeds and broadleaf weeds. We have the insect pests, which can further be broken down to, in more scientific terms, the insect pests themselves and the mites. And then we have the disease pests. So we have the fungal diseases, the viruses, and we have the bacterial diseases. Now, we have so many ways of controlling. Is there, I would request if we would kindly just mute so that there is no echo unless we are giving feedback. So yeah, so where we come in the farming systems is to help know how to control these pests that are by and large the normal life of a farmer. You would actually expect to fight either weeds or insect pests or diseases if you are to produce enough. We have to go back to our definition of having sufficient and safe. So for us to have sufficient, we have to control the enemies of the cropping systems. And so we come in with various methods. And they go all the way from the seed you start with. The farmers are advised to, as much as practically possible, to use certified seeds. From that, we come in with, you only end up with the chemical side, which is the one I want to end up with. You only end up with the chemical side of control when you've tried the other methods, and they include the cultural methods. You keep your cropping system well aerated to prevent fungal diseases, for example. You also, as much as possible, encourage the development of natural enemies. You make sure that you do crop rotation so that you discourage the overdependence of pests on one particular crop, and then therefore blowing up the populations. So you exhaust the cultural methods, and then, and only then, you can delve into what I know most of our listeners want to hear about. I have to say that due to the intensity of our cultivation systems, I cannot say with confidence that we can be able to produce in this country without the employment of chemical control. The reason being, we first of all, it's not that easy even to do that cultural control. For example, in Kitale, Lillian, if you are told to kill fall armyworms mechanically, I believe it's just like selling ice cream to an Eskimo. So basically, they are easier said than done, especially when you're talking about extensive cropping systems. Now, so we are left with what we call the lesser evil, and the lesser evil here is you have to employ something that will work for this extensive system so that we save the crop, but then you have to use those pesticides in a safe way. So I'll start with, let's put in our minds right now, and please keep telling me how much time I have left so that I will wrap up very fast and try to give more feedback during the answer session. So we are left with the use of pesticides. Mm-hmm. And in this country, I think we are not where we were some years back, but we are not there yet. Because the way the pesticides are being used, you just even think about it, even in the COVID time, even people being told to use just a mask for your own good, you're not using pesticides. People are taking it lightly, and people are using it as a bow tie, as I'm hearing them being called nowadays, you know? So I want us to picture in front of us a label. In this country, we have a regulator called the Pest Control and Pesticides Board. And I can say I really am impressed with where we are right now, because most of what I could have said, I wouldn't say it if we didn't have especially something like the website of the PCPB. And I would say that I would encourage even in the future, if labels, all pesticides that are put on the PCPB website, that they have labels, every single entry on that list. And by the way, what I'm referring to, maybe later we would put it up, is the website of the PCPB, because each and every registered product in this country is put on that website. And it's put in that website in a very well broken down format. So I want to picture in front of us a label. On that label, you have the brand name of that product. That brand name tells you nothing about what that product is, other than what to ask for when you go to the shop. So give me A, give me B, give me C. But the second thing that is very key, and this is found in what we call the primary panel of a label, this is where the major phase, so to speak, you find the active ingredient. This is the real chemical that is doing the job. So you'll be able to know what chemical you're dealing with. And it is with this now that the real game starts. From there, you'll be able to know the quantities of that active ingredient that is in that bottle that you're holding. So for example, it comes in grams per liter. How many grams per liter? What is the quantity in grams per liter of that AI are found in the bottle, that in 1 liter of the final product? On that time,
Robert, you have a few minutes, like the next 2 minutes. 2 minutes. Yes.
Okay. So so you also have the safe how safely to spray that pesticide. On the same bottle, on the same label, it gives you a color code which tells you which hazard class that pesticide belongs to. Very importantly, every user must check whether there is a registration number, because it is immoral, not only illegal, it is immoral in this country to use a pesticide which is not registered. Because no one bears the responsibility. The regulator does not bear the responsibility of such a product. So never buy a pesticide that does not have a label, and never buy a pesticide with a label without the number. And then at the back, you will find the directions of use. This tells you which pest is it controlling, at what rate, and most importantly, for safety, what is the pre-harvest interval, what people call the PHI. What is the pre-harvest interval? The days in which you must wait prior to harvesting. And then there is the re-entry, because you're not only taking care of the consumer, of the future consumer of the product, you have to take care of the guy who is spraying. And so you have the re-entry period. So it's not only important to wear the helmet and the gloves and the plastic apron and the gumboots and the respirator. It is also very important to know at what time should that guy go back to that area that has been sprayed.
So Robert, I'm going to stop here a little bit so that we can probably hear from Gabi, Gabriel, so that we can take questions on the crop protection. Then we can move on to Lillian. So Gabi, the floor is yours. Please unmute your mic, Gabi.
Mute. I hope now you can get me.
Yes, sure.
Maybe I'll go on from where Robert has left, because as an expert in agrochemicals and also as a farmer, I'll try and touch on both issues.
Yes.
Sure. One thing for my farmers, they should have that PCPB website, which I don't know how we can share it with them. But
okay, Ricky has shared the website, and we are also going to share the website on the soccer page so that people know about it. And probably at the end of the session, we are going to also display it a little bit, maybe for a minute or so. Yeah.
Then that will be good, because then you're able to know which chemicals are used, and you also see the actives, and you can also read a bit about it and know what the chemical is for. That's number one. There are some challenges, of course, in the industry, because I, as a farmer, my biggest problem is after I use the chemical, how do I dispose of the canisters? On the level, we are being told to burn them in an incinerator facility. I cannot, maybe I've only used 1 or 2 liters. What to do about them? This is food for thought. PCPB, I know, is working on it, but at least even as farmers or distributors, we should get this knowledge out. Tell people the first step, make sure you puncture the bottle after use, so that you can assure safety that it won't be used to get water and the likes. That's a bit on safety. A major thing that is happening in the country that AAK, Agrochemicals Association of Kenya, are trying to get to farmers is there are these guys called SSPs who are sprayers. They are qualified by AAK that they know what they are doing. This is both good for distributors, for our sector, and for farmers, because when you use these guys, and they're all over, we can get the contacts from AAK and give to the distributors and farmers, because what they do, they know the chemicals. One thing, when they spray your farm, you're guaranteed that you'll get results, and you're sure they're not using fake stuff. This is the kind of things I want our farmers, me included, to start adopting, because I've used a few and it becomes cheaper than doing it by yourself sometimes. You look at going to buy the chemical, you're told I don't have this chemical, it's somewhere else. You have to go end up using so much. Then you come and spray, sometimes you're not even sure whether you bought the right chemical. So these are important factors to think about. The other key now as a farmer, the other key aspect for our farmers, do we do our math before farming? Or we just look at these stories of tomatoes, they're selling at 2,000, I will plant and sell. One trick I'll tell to my farmers what I do. If I'm doing tomatoes, I go, because I know my quality of tomatoes I'll get. I go to Nakumat, former Nakumat, buy the same tomatoes, come and try sell them. Once I sell those, then I can be able to tell the guy I'm selling to that this is the kind of quality I can guarantee you, but this is the last batch. In another 2 months, 3 months, I'll have such. Farmers, let's think ahead. Don't wait for you, because when you come to me and tell me I'm doing tomatoes, the first thing I ask is I want a sample. I wait for 3 months. 3 months, you bring the sample, I tell you I already have crop. I already have bought from someone else. What do you do with their produce? So this is food for thought for farmers. So one thing is, let's go for safety, farmers. Do not assume these chemicals are not toxic. Do not assume that because they don't harm you in 1 year, 2 years, that they are safe for use. They can go as far as 8 years, 10 years, but they will harm you. So these are some of the things we need to look at. So I don't know whether I still, that's as much as I can balance between the farmer and the, unless the other issues, I think I could add more of my time to Robert to go on, because he was doing a great job.
No, I think what we can do probably is take some questions, because there's a question from Karim, who's actually brought in, and this could be either between you or Gabi to just try and elaborate on this. There are products like bioproducts, the biopesticides, the biofungicide, the biostimulators that are now currently in the market. Do these really add value to the quality of the produce? And also, do they increase in terms of increasing productivity and also the soil conditioners? There are a lot of bioproducts I'm sure you're aware of, and some of them are registered, most of them are not. So how does this affect agriculture? And especially when you talk about sustaining agriculture, especially when we are looking at the future of agriculture and the small scale farmers who are more even vulnerable to such products, because most of them are probably cheaper than the normal conventional chemicals. What would be your advice on such products? And also there's another question. There are about 3 questions on pesticides. So I don't know if you would like me to read all of them. So we're also talking about climate change and the pest cycle. Of course, we know what climate change does to the pests and diseases over time. So how can such considerations be incorporated in advice when given to farmers and in crop production businesses? When we are talking about climate change, We are looking at floods. Now we are looking at locusts, which are very resistant to the chemicals that are being sprayed. What advice can we give our farmers? And finally, when we are looking at EU, in terms of the molecules, removing molecules, some the active ingredients that we're talking about. And I think that also touches on another question that I'll bring on board later. But just looking at the MRLs, the maximum residue levels, yeah, when you're looking at this, what is in terms of risk, and when you're looking at the MRLs, what would be your comments on if PCPB, the Pesticide Control Board, is able to keep up with these changes? Is it able to keep up with such changes when it comes to the EU regulations? So those are the questions that I have picked from the people who are attending. Yes.
I think I will take on, if you allow me, the climate change question, because I've labored a lot and had sleepless nights on matters climate change. Maybe Gabi would deal with the MRL question as well. So I'll try and take care of the bioproducts and the climate change. Please, Gabriel, feel free to add whatever part you want. Now, when let me discuss first the bioproducts. Everyone is in business. So let's first face it that by the time someone is bringing a bioproduct and it has, assuming, passed through the proper channels and it has found itself on a Kenyan shelf, everyone is in business. There is no one who will say my product does not work. So, and that's where our farmers are. So, and for bio, let's first, I want to believe that they were talking about biofertilizers or biostimulants. I don't believe, I want to assume they are not talking about biopesticides, because when we talk about pesticides, what I know, maybe Lydian can tell us about the fertilizer side. What I know about pesticides, they go through the normal registration process where they are taken to the research sites, and then finally they are registered for use locally, having been approved for use somewhere else in the world. So I don't have a big problem in the efficacy of these biopesticides. What I think we are contending here is the use of biostimulants or these fertilizer related products that add into either the nutrition or the reduction of stress. I think there is only one way to know, to be honest. With the farmer, I always say, if you sell a bad product, you're only a fool, because only a fool will go back and buy for a second time a product that did not work. So the first thing, even by the time the farmer is buying a first time, I want to encourage farmers to be our first line of scientists. The first person who will check for us whether a product works or not is the end user. We can do the best. We owe them. We have an ethical role to make sure that we deliver to farmers products that are working. But I also want to challenge the farmer that they have a social responsibility and also an ethical responsibility to know that they should be able to whistleblow on products that don't work. It only takes one season, and you don't need to use it on a whole 100 hectares. You can do some sort of your own small plot trials to see whether they work. Climate change. It's unfortunate that we are discussing this in the wake of this terrible locust pandemic, if I can call it. But I want to say on a very localized scale, we should be careful not to remove totally the biodiversity around our cultivation places. And I say this because even before I say we should exhaust all other measures of control before we end up coming with the big guns, which we call pesticides. And the unfortunate bit about pesticide, which I didn't get to talk about, is that they end up creating what we call resistant or type B pests. So let's assume that you had a pesticide that killed aphids, and you took a pesticide that kills aphids and wasps at the same time. You didn't care. You said, my problem is aphids, and I'm going to come up with go with a pesticide that kills anything it finds. So you know what you're doing? You will kill the aphids, like you, but then at the end of the day, you will have killed the parasitoids. And parasitoids, they are naturally the enemies of aphids. They help you when you don't even have any idea. When you're busy sleeping, they help you to kill the aphids. So the encouragement I would want to give to our farmers is that let's be quite specific with the pest we want to kill. Because by going broad spectrum all the time, when even you don't have the pest that you're intending to kill, you have not scouted, you end up killing the natural enemies. And people have even cut down on vegetation. These natural enemies are hiding in the bushes. They're hiding in the vegetation that are not in the main crop that we are growing. So we would advise that even the bushes around our cropping system, that we avoid spraying on these bushes, because this is where the natural enemies are breeding. And with this, we'll be able to increase the populations of the natural enemies, with which we can at least not create the type B pests. Because when you kill the parasitoids, it means that then the pest that you did not intend to kill will increase, because now it doesn't have a natural enemy. And then tomorrow now you'll find not only an aphid, you'll find an aphid and another type of pest that was being killed by the natural enemy that you killed. So my advice is that let's encourage the increase of natural enemies as much as possible. And this is by preserving the biodiversity. If you can plant trees, sorry, I will rephrase. If you must, because you must be planting trees, please be planting trees. Yeah.
True. Gabi, there are some questions also that have come in terms of how do you ensure that the people who are spraying have the right type of safety outfit for them to go into the spraying. How do you actually ensure that? I know you've mentioned AAK and SSPs. What is the meaning of AAK and what is the meaning of SSP, so that our viewers can also understand this, so that we understand how do we actually ensure that farmers are wearing these outfits or these safety gears that they're supposed to wear when they are spraying or doing the pesticide application.
Okay, maybe let me start with that last question, then I go back to the EU issue on molecules. One of the best ways to ensure that someone is using the right gear is especially where we mostly go wrong is on the overall. The overall should be such that it does not let in water or chemical to the body. A good example will be, a cheap example will be something like a raincoat, but still there are special overalls made for pesticides that don't allow, because pesticides also have some small molecules and adjuvants that help them penetrate. So there are these special suits. They are sold, there are companies who sell them around. I could give you a list after the webinar. That could be my work. I get you a few of the companies where people can engage with them to get such. I know one of our biggest issues in Africa is tropic, it's hot. You're told to wear that overall, it's heavy, you're sweating. What I devised while where I was working last, we came up with a way that you could put in a cotton lining, like the way dresses have that lining, so that it is not so hot. But that's a topic for another day. Masks, don't just go to the supermarket and buy masks. Most of the supermarket masks are meant for smoke and sewerage, not chemicals. There are specific masks for chemicals. You have to look for those, and you have to ensure that they're for chemicals like agrochemicals, because chemicals have many classes. You'll find like now a good example is, you know, the long black gloves that the council people wear. Those are good for some chemicals found in sewerage, but agrochemicals, 50% of agrochemicals will go through those. So you need to use the right, which I will of course share, but also in case people have burning questions on this, AAK is Agrochemicals Association of Kenya. They can go to their website. Once they post a question there, AAK will answer them. Once they come into contact with SOCA, I know SOCA is also doing such. Once they ask these questions in SOCA, I'm sure SOCA will get the relevant person. If it's me, you get me the questions, I'm able to answer, so that we can at least advise our farmers so they can use the right attire. Now, let me go back to safety, EU molecules. I will start by saying, number one, that there's been quite some hullabaloo about EU banning products, Kenya still using them. This is pure activism, because I will tell you confidently, Kenya is ranked among the top 3 registration bodies in chemicals in Africa. If you get your product registered in Kenya, it will most definitely be registered anywhere else in Africa very easily, because the kind of information needed to register a chemical, an agrochemical here is kind of similar to the one in EU. So it is a known factor. The people in PCPB, because I've attended trainings with them, they are taken outside. In fact, I will tell you right now, I know they are working with the Netherlands bodies of regulations. So people, I know there's been a lot of activism. Of course, when you go to the agrochemical activism, there's money there in the activism. Now, one thing I'll pose to farmers, where does most of our horticulture go to? EU. EU send their auditors here. Do you really think that that chemicals will be allowed to be used here, yet our produce goes to Europe? I will make the farmers a bit comfortable. When EU bans a chemical, the chemical somehow is automatically stopped in Kenya, because we know if the MRLs, maximum residue levels, which is the chemical itself, what if you use more than is supposed to be what is found in the crop. If it is found in a crop, we become red flagged, which means we lose our produce from here. It becomes difficult to sell our produce. So PCPB, Pest Control Board, diligently stops that chemical in Kenya. At least on this, I can support the pest control, because they're doing a good job on that. But if someone feels one of the things, don't go after the activists. We will share the PCPB website. Post the question there. They will answer you. On the PCPB website, you can see the products that are allowed. Also, you can go into a website called EFSA, which is the European Food Safety website, where the chemicals, they list where if the chemicals are banned or if they're in use. So people should do more research. Don't just take it literally that this is banned in Europe. Sometimes, you know, some countries ban chemicals. I will use an example. When there was an issue with the glyphosate, Roundup, Rwanda went ahead and banned it without good information, because some countries were banning it. EU, have they banned it? I don't think so, not yet. So when people here are saying chemicals are banned here, they could be banned in one country, but they are used in another. For example, US were claiming that they won't ban Roundup. As much as it is EU, some countries were saying they might ban it. US was saying don't ban it. So I'd also tell people, sometimes go to these big countries, check on you just need to type the name of the chemical, or you type if it's glyphosate. Is glyphosate used in US? You'll get your answers there. That is on.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Gabby. We will go back to the question and answer session, and some of the comments we are getting from our viewers is that, like from Dr. Esther Kimani, she's saying that if things like biopesticides go through registration, if you want to do that, you can go through the Kenya Plant Health Inspectorate Service, that is KEFIS. So you can go through there. Some of them that now require that you have the pest control or disease control bit, then it's sent to PCPB for efficacy trials. So most of the government institutes in Kenya work hand in hand, and they work side by side. So we are going to give this chance now to Lillian to take us through her presentation. Then we'll go back to a small brief Q&A again before we wind up. Thank you. Karibu, Lillian.
Asante. Asante, Ekesa. I'll just go back to where I left. I hope you can see the slides. So what I really just wanted to show, I'll summarize here. What I really wanted to show is what we've been doing in terms of soil degradation in our soils. So we apply less nutrients than what we actually removing. And so what we end up doing is actually nutrient mining. So this table here, I'll just go briefly again. What I was trying to show is what we are inputting, the total inputs versus what we had been removing over the years. That is why we are getting farmers complaining, oh, our yields are going down. Because our soils started at a place where we had fertile soils, but because we've not taken care of them, we've been removing nutrients without returning them, we've gotten to a point where our soils have become depleted. Yeah. Yeah. So this is just a table, a summary table, just showing the amount of nutrients removed by different crops. So if you can see, for example, for rice is another area where in Mwea, especially something like potassium is becoming slowly a limiting nutrient because they've been farming over the years. And as you can see, the potassium requirement for rice, it's quite high without returning. Right now, if you go to Mwea, at least I know farmers know what MOP is and they try to add some K to their when they are doing their rice farming. Now, this is just a small demonstration when I was talking about balanced fertilization and about what we are doing in terms of nutrient mining. Now, we had a project with some small-scale farmers in Molo and Marakwet and Nyandarua in terms of fertilization. It was a cooperation between some agrochemical company and us as a fertilizer company. And what we realized is that farmers were saying they've added in terms of application rates of DAP because over time they've been getting their yields are going down. And so the solution, according to them, is to apply more DAP and maybe the yields will go up. The problem with that is that you're only applying two nutrients, nitrogen and phosphorus. And if you can remember what I mentioned, the plant growth or productivity will be limited by what is the limiting nutrient. So for example, here, potassium is a very key nutrient when it comes to potatoes. We've been saying we have enough potassium in our soils, but over time we've depleted even that. Some areas still have high levels of potassium, some areas don't have. So what we basically did, we targeted to get them to 30 metric tons per hectare, and that is exactly what we did. We just changed in terms of nutrients, made a more balanced fertilization, and we were able to get most of the farmers to about 28 tons per hectare. This would vary based on different conditions, and so this is not like I would not say just go and try it. You have to understand your soils first. Now, another thing that farmers don't really understand when in Kenya is the issue of soil acidity. Soil acidity is something that farmers right now are more aware, but there's a misunderstanding when it comes to what are the causes of soil acidity in Kenya. So soil acidity is a natural process. High rainfall causes leaching, and over time, the leaching of cations, which will lead to the acidification of soils. Intensive agriculture, so when you grow crops, you remove cations, there's more leaching because you're adding fertilizers and all those things. And then, of course, fertilizer in themselves also are a source of acidification. And now this photo on the side here, what I was trying to show is how nutrients actually cause acidification. When you remove all the cationic elements and you do not return, what happens then? Your soils become acidic. And if you look at the areas in Kenya where you have high levels of acidity, Western Kenya, mostly, those are places with high rainfall and you have intensive agriculture. And we apply fertilizer, but very little, as I had shown before. So it's a combination of these factors, and it's not just DAP that is the cause. So now when it comes to fertilizers and acidification, nitrogen is one of the main nutrients that would have the highest levels, nitrogenous fertilizers, but then hello, can you still hear me?
Yes.
Okay, we lost power, so I was not sure whether we still had internet. So yeah, so let me just quickly go because it looks like today's.
Okay, we seem to have lost Lillian again. Yeah, but I'm sure she'll get back in. Maybe before she comes back, we can try to see if we can answer some few questions that had been raised by the viewers. So how has your experience been in terms of helping farmers, especially during this COVID-19 period? I know we had most of you had to get passes to go across counties. Some of you who are in the areas where there was lockdown and cessation, how have you handled it during this period? And if you were to change one thing about how we helped farmers, what would be the change in the midterm? And also, what are some of the suggestions you would give in order to build a lasting change in optimum use of agrochemicals? This is from Patrick Sigay, who has sent that to the panelists. So probably, let me see if there's another. There was several questions for Dr. Lillian about the nutrients and the calculations that we know as scientists. So how confident are we that smallholder farmers are well equipped with the nutrient calculation knowledge? You know, most of them will just buy a bag of DAP written 18460, but they might not understand what is in that 18460. So how confident are we about this? Then maybe this goes out to all the panelists. What will the government subsidy, fertilizer subsidy, even looking at just the input subsidy program exit implication look like in regards to food security and especially to smallholder livelihoods? Are our farmers fully equipped to cope with this kind of exit? There's a question again to Dr. Lillian regarding K deficiency. K is potassium, and what is the optimum requirement of potassium for Irish potatoes? So this comes from Douglas Omoke, and some of the questions were from Peter Modi. And of course, we appreciate also Dr. Esther Kimani, who is a former MD at Kenya Plant Health Inspectorate Service. Asante sana daktari for joining us today. We appreciate you. So maybe we can try to answer some of these questions before Lillian comes on board. Ricky, you might want to take some of the questions as well. I can see you online. So Robert.
He's on mute.
He will come back. Yeah. So,
okay, experiences during this COVID-19 period. To be honest, we cannot throw away the baby with the bathwater in this whole pandemic issue. One of the things I've come to really appreciate is how our farmers have been pushed to a hunger for knowledge in ways that we thought, these farmers are in the rural areas. Forget about website, forget about giving them information remotely. We decided to run a short experiment with this. So we said we put something on our website, and then we took as many phone numbers that we can get of as we could get of our farmers, and then we sent a message saying we appreciate farmers. You're doing a good job, which indeed was true and is still true. They're doing a tremendous job because, again, they could also have decided to stay at home. So we said they're doing a good job. And then we said, there's this product that we want you to learn about. And this is the link to our website. And then we sent it to more than 500 farmers. And we got more than 50% hits on the website of that web page, meaning that there was traffic. And we had done this before pre-COVID. We have done this 1,000 times until we said our farmers are not for this website business. But this time around, many farmers have come to appreciate the having this information on the website. I get calls nowadays. Sometimes I even have to switch off my phone if I have to concentrate on something, because the traffic on the website is so high, and they want to ask now questions because they've gotten a number from the website. We are trying to ask farmers, where did you get my contact? No, I was on your website. I've seen you've posted ABCD. And I'm telling you, this should be encouraged. It's time to not assume that our farmers cannot relate well with technology. I'll remind us, the other day we were all saying we cannot migrate to this digital migration. People are going in arms. We want to keep our, we don't want to buy boxes and everything. Today, no one remembers that we were analog. No one remembers, including our parents in the rural areas. We assume that farmers cannot move with the times, but desperate times call for desperate measures, and this is a good, what we call a good problem. So I would say my experience is that there is a real-time switch to consumption of material from the internet, and this is a very good platform for people for advisors, because to be honest, now we are locked in the metropole unless you have a pass, and even when you have a pass, sometimes you have to gamble between going so far. You might not be allowed to come back, yet you are allowed to come out. So basically the experience is that now farmers are getting the hang of it. There is something called learning from the internet. And to add to it, this is good because there was a real gap between us, the suppliers, and the farmer. And this I've experienced it many times when I walk into an agrovet and I just pause like every other buyer, and you can sympathize with the farmer. He comes and says, I have aphids, or let's say I have this kind of weeds. Then he's asked, what did you use last time? Then he says what he used last time. Then the guy on the other side gives something similar, or now is educated by the farmer on what to offer, because they don't have the idea themselves on what to offer in that to that farmer. So most of the guys who are selling, especially chemicals, they need to be given this information firsthand. And so when they realize they can get it online, which is what has happened now that we were not visiting them the way we visit agrovets, they can now learn, have a hunger for knowledge, and they find that, wow, I can be able to help a farmer with more value add than just selling. Give me money, I give you a product. I can be able to tell you which weeds you have, what this is the PHI of this product. You cannot use it on French beans, for example, or on tomatoes that you're selling. It becomes a hub for knowledge. I think
before we go to Dr. Lillian, sorry, today it's a bit tough, but we are there. We are getting the hang of it. So don't be discouraged.
It's not clearly not my day today.
No, we will stay here until you're able to deliver your presentation. And there are a lot of questions on your end. When you're off, I went through some of the questions, so we are going to check them. But just before we get back to you, Gabriel, what's your experience as a farmer, especially during this COVID period? How has it been? Are you one of those farmers who have to travel out of town? How has that impacted on your, on your farming activities?
I will start with I'm a cane farmer at the coast. Wow. I have no idea what is happening there. The guy just keeps calling me, telling me I need this, I need that. I hope he hasn't burnt the farm. I mean, Nakuru, at least Nakuru, I know something is happening. But my biggest problem with this COVID is I will challenge the government, because what the president and the CS for health says is one thing. What the police understand is their own thing. I have the exit, the essential service card. They keep on questioning me, telling me, how do we know it's from a bureau? You haven't gone and done it in a cyber bureau. Now, the guy can see sometimes I'm carrying input, but he'll still ask me funny questions. So it's a bit discouraging. You get tired. And let's face it, most of farmers in Kenya, I'll say about 80% of the small scale, they need to see something by demonstration. They do not understand by reading. Even myself, I go through some of the chemicals, I read it twice, thrice, and I just leave it. If I don't understand it, I don't bother anymore. And Robert, something you had said that I should buy, as a farmer now, I should buy a chemical and use it before I can do it on a large acreage. As a farmer, rains are running, don't wait for me to try. These are some of the challenges we have as farmers. I cannot try on 1 acre and I have 20 acres with weeds. I need something that works. My advantage is I know I can get contacts. I come to soccer, ask, has anyone tried this? I go to other forums, ask, does anyone know this? There are many forums I see in Facebook, Digital Farmers, and others. So at least you're able to know. And this is what I'm saying, especially during this COVID and experience I've had, people are more vocal on those groups. You can see questions running in and out. And this is how you learn. You learn new technologies. For your information, now as an agronomist, I think I've learned more of 80% about my chemicals from the farmer. Farmers do experiments, myself included. You tell us these for grass weeds. I will do it on broad and seeds. It works. So you also,
yeah. Those are some of the questions that we'll have to deal with before we close today. But just give the opportunity now to Dr. Lillian to probably summarize for us her presentation, and so that, because it was really getting, we're getting excited about all these cations and, acidity. So let's go back to Dr. Lillian. Yeah. Karibu tena. Yeah. You're on mute. Mute. Yeah. Lillian, you're on mute. We can't hear you.
Sorry. Okay.
Yeah.
Now you can hear me?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. So now what I was going to say is that I don't think I want to go through the whole presentation, because clearly today is one of those days we are having technological challenges. So in terms of soil pH, this is what I'm saying. I'll say there's only one solution to being able to deal with soil acidity, and that is liming. And the best way to do that is you need to do a soil analysis, get the amount of lime you need. There are a lot of questions when it comes to liming, and if we have time, maybe we can answer that. Types of liming, how do I apply, rates, and all those things. But liming is the only solution when it comes to soil acidity. The other option you can do is, if your pH is in a good range, not so low, then you can look for crops that would do well within the region of your soil pH. Tips that you need to maybe know in terms of nutrient deficiencies is that NP and K, the macronutrients plus magnesium, they are not mobile in plants, so it's easy to know that when you're looking for nutrient deficiencies, they'll be appearing on the older leaves. The younger leaves will usually show nutrient deficiency for all the others. So if you can just get NPK and magnesium, that okay, if I'm seeing nutrient deficiencies on the lower older leaves, most likely it's NP and K. The issue of mobility of nutrients in soil and plants is also important when you come in terms of understanding when and how to apply a particular nutrient. For example, nitrogen, we know that it is mobile in soil, and so you cannot apply it at the beginning of the season. You need to apply it when it is needed. Otherwise, a lot of it is going to be lost through leaching and volatilization. Calcium is another. This is just an example of showing how You need to manage when and how and where to apply nutrients. Calcium is another one of those nutrients that is very challenging when it comes to fertilization because it's only transported in the xylem, and therefore where it is needed, mostly in the fruits, it's very hard for it to get there. So you need to ensure that your soil has enough calcium. The other option is if you do foliar fertilization, you need to apply where it is needed. That means you have to do it very often. And so those are some of the challenges that you need to understand. And of course, calcium that causes blossom end rot. Now, types of fertilizers. Now, in Kenya, when you talk about fertilizers, farmers will tell you DAP, CAN, and others will tell you urea, most of the small-scale farmers. Now, with time, 5 years back, that was the same story. But now, at least farmers are getting more knowledgeable about blends and NPKs. But when you mention NPKs to farmers, the first NPK they'll tell you is 1717. There are many types of fertilizers out there, and with different unique, or rather with different properties for different nutrients. So we have the commodity fertilizers like the ammonium nitrates, the DAP, what we know here, calcium nitrate, and these supply either one or two nutrients, either the nitrogen or the phosphorus or the potassium. And then you have now the blends, which are unique in the fact that you can be able, it's a blend of different granules that you can be able to have a balanced, all the nutrients in one fertilizer. And then you have the compound where you have all the nutrients in one granule, which is different from the blends. The advantage of this is that you can be able to supply all nutrients based on, you can have more nutrients in one with the blends and the compounds. You have specialty fertilizers, and in this you have fertilizers like controlled release fertilizers and slow release fertilizers, which are two different things. Advantages of this is that you have reduced nutrient losses. You can apply less fertilizer if you've gotten to that efficiency, and then you can it contributes to sustainable fertilizer usage because you can either apply everything at once, costs and all those things, advantages and disadvantages compared to other things. And then of course you have water solubles where farmers are able to do fertigation and foliar fertilization. Application methods, I want to go through this. It's the normal broadcast fertigation and foliar application. Now, one thing I'd want to say in terms of foliar fertilization, please, please, please do not use foliar fertilization to supply all your nutrient needs. It does not work. The amount of nutrients that plants can absorb through foliar application is very, very limited. So it only comes as a complementary. You can use it either to correct nutrient deficiency and to enhance whatever fertilizer is given in terms of basal fertilization, or even and to supply mostly the micronutrients when they are needed and where they are needed. So in general, just to summarize, when the principles of fertilizer application, what you need to remember, the right source, you need to choose the right fertilizer product for your application method. You need to look at all those factors that we've talked about, whether you can apply all the nutrients you need with one fertilizer or you need different types of fertilizers to apply the balanced fertilization. You need to consider that you apply the right rate for whatever yield input you want, output you want. And then placement. This is very key because for efficiency, you need to apply it correctly. If you apply it directly where the roots are going to grow, then you're going to have scorching and all those things. So where you apply is also very important. The right timing for each nutrient. Like I mentioned, nitrogen, you cannot apply it at the beginning unless maybe you're using controlled release fertilizer. Nutrients like phosphorus and potassium don't easily leach unless you're in very sandy soils and all those things. So the right timing for each nutrient is very, very key. And as I finish, soils are very important. Without soils, and if we don't take care of our soils, we can't produce enough food to feed us. So we need to take care of our soils in a holistic manner. You need to know your soils. If they're acidic, please lime them. You can do that gradually. We need to do balanced fertilization to avoid nutrient mining. You need to be able to consider all aspects. You can do integrated soil fertility, combine organic versus organic. Both have advantages and disadvantages, and they work best together. They complement one another. consider soil conservation practices depending on the type of crops you're growing and all that. So let's take care of our soil so that it can feed us better. Yeah, so I'll take questions.
Yeah, thank you so much, Lillian. And I'm going to just go through some of the questions that we have from our viewers. And one of the questions that has been raised is, how do farmers really know how to calculate the nutrients? Do you think a small scale farmer can be able to calculate the nutrients? Say if they got 1 bag of DAP or 1 bag of CAN, are they able to actually know how much of the nutrients are in that bag? And are we confident that our small scale farmers will actually know this to be able to benefit their farming? Then also we have government subsidy program. This is from Peter Mudi. And he says that with the government fertilizer subsidy program exiting, there's now that exit from basically supplying fertilizer subsidies. And now we are moving to the e-voucher system. And what do you think is the impact of this on the smallholder farmers? And especially when you're looking at are they ready really to take up now to start buying inputs from the shops without really necessarily getting government intervention? Also, we have what have you realized that there's K deficiency in Kenya? I know we've had these discussions with you about K, just adding a little bit of K to and you'd see some improvement. But is there really strong evidence to show that there's deficiency of K in Kenya, in the Kenyan soils? And what is the optimum fertilizer in terms of if you're looking at K, what's the optimum requirement of K for Irish potatoes? This is from Douglas Omoke. Then the final question, okay, this is more of a request. Douglas is also asking that you can share the presentation with them. We'll try to see if we can do that. And also there is one from Patrick Sigay. He's asking about the combination of regimes in terms of organic and inorganic fertilizer. Are there attempts to do such a thing in terms of combining both, like having the inorganic and organic in one bag or something like that for the farmers? And finally, we have a final question from one who asks about the blend, the granules. When you're talking about sometimes the blends, the granules, they separate, and this makes the nutrients not uniformly distributed in the bag. How can these blends be improved to ensure uniform distribution of nutrients in the bag? This is from Dr. Esther Kimani. Yeah, so, and then just to maybe, as we go into the wrap-up session, for Lillian, when you're looking at the soil, for example, do you think that it's time that the country, or rather Kenya as a government, tried to zone out our area in terms of Kenya to know that we need specific crops for specific areas, so that the people in the fertilizer industry can come up with formulations. Those in soil testing services can also test the soils and be able to provide the feedback to the fertilizer companies to be able to provide fertilizers that are specific to those crops. Do you feel that this is a service that fertilizer companies should offer, and they should be like a must that the fertilizers companies offer? And also for the crop protection, generally, when you're looking at this, you've mentioned their classes, Gabriel, you've mentioned about classes of chemicals. How does a farmer know which one is class A? I don't know if it's class A or class B or class C, or even if there's class Z, we don't know that. I'm a small scale farmer, I don't understand that. How do they know the classifications of these pesticides? And also looking at the various application methods, maybe this goes out to Robert. How do you advise a farmer to apply the pesticides? For example, I remember one time I was told, no, if you're doing a systemic pesticide this time, next time, protect it with something else. How do you ensure that farmers are not, building the resistance of pests and diseases without themselves knowing that they are doing so through your advice as an agronomist? Yeah. So
Okay.
Lillian, will start with you.
Okay, thanks, Nekesa. Many questions. I hope I'll be able to remember all of them and answer them. I'll start with your last question on soil mapping and soil-specific fertilizers, if I would summarize it as that. And I will combine that with the first question about small-scale farmers being able to calculate the nutrients that they need. So now, with the small scale farmers, I would say we've come a long way. 5 years back, or even 6 years back, you talk to farmers and all they knew was DAP. They even didn't know what DAP provided. Most of them, they just knew DAP is a fertilizer for planting, CAN is a fertilizer for top dressing. I would say I'm glad that where we are now, farmers are more aware about, okay, when it's DAP, there's a number 18460 and what that means. But then, like the person who asked the question rightly put, it would be hard for small-scale farmers to sit down and calculate all the nutrients that they need and what to apply. And that's why there has been a push towards blended fertilizers. And with the blended fertilizers, what most of the fertilizer companies are doing is coming up with a blend and saying, okay, this is a blend for planting for this specific crop, and these are the rates that you can apply. And this is a blend for top dressing for this particular crop, and this is a rate that you can apply. So at least for the small scale farmers, now they are more aware of the fact that, okay, I need more than just DAP and CAN. I need to have more balanced fertilization. We still have a lot of more work to do to keep to build that awareness. I don't think we are there yet, but at least we've made some baby steps in that direction. Farmers know a lot about the blended fertilizers and the fact that it gives you more more nutrients than just the DAPs and the CAN. And this is not to say that DAP and CAN is a bad fertilizer. No, DAP and CAN are good fertilizers. They provide specific nutrients that are needed. The other question was, okay, on soil mapping and soil specific fertilizers. There have been projects done in different countries. There is a project called African Fertilizer Soil Information Service, and they've been doing a lot of mapping in different countries. For example, they've had a great success in Ethiopia, where with Ethiopia, they had the support of the government, and they did a mapping of all their soils, and they've been able to segment, like you're saying, regions based on their soil types and fertilizer needs. That would be definitely great to do in Kenya. And that would be a great help to the fertilizer industry in being able to come up with the right blends for specific places and different crops. But at the same time, I would say in Kenya, in terms of a fertilizer industry, we are way ahead compared to our neighbors. And the fertilizer industry players have done a great job in terms of bringing different blends. They've done their own, a lot of them are doing their own research and figuring it out through soil testing and doing different blends and doing trials and all those things to see what works. But yes, there's still a lot that we can do in that area. K deficiencies. Yeah, so I happen to also to work for an organization called International Potash Institute, and so I can really talk about K deficiencies in Kenya. We are doing trials with KALRO in terms of looking at K deficiencies, and what we have seen for sure is that the western parts of Kenya, in terms of maize, K deficient levels are going down. The Mwea region, the eastern parts also, where they grow a lot of rice, K deficiencies are also starting to be seen, and in the potato regions also. So yes, we still have many areas with high levels of potassium, but because of what we've been doing over time of unbalanced fertilization, we are starting to see nutrient limitations for K. Not only K, sulfur is another nutrient that is becoming very limiting, and micronutrients. So yes, the question was on Irish potatoes. So it depends. It depends on your yield target. So I would say between 120 to 150K per hectare, depending on where you are and depending on where your soil K levels are. There are some places where the K levels are still very high. So I would advise putting for this a little bit of potassium for the sake of maintenance. But there are areas where it's depleted, and there you need to add the potassium. There was another question about subsidy, and I think how that is going to affect their affordability to the farmers. Now, I would say it's a good thing that the government is switching to the e-voucher system, because then that gives the farmer the choice to pick the right fertilizer for their crops. Before, it was more of a blanket choice for the farmers, and sometimes the farmers were being given what was not the correct thing. So moving to the e-voucher system is a good thing, because then the farmer can choose. And that also opens up for the fertilizer industry people to work hard to bring the right product, because if I buy today on an e-voucher your product, it doesn't work, I'll go to this other person. So that ensures in terms of quality. And there's still the fact that with the e-voucher, the farmer still gets a more affordable fertilizer. Organic versus inorganic, combining that together into a fertilizer bag is going to be very difficult. It would be better just to bring the organic inputs on their own and the inorganic inputs on their own. What some people do, like for example, people who sell organic fertilizers, is they would spike up the organic fertilizers with inorganic fertilizers. But then there's only much you can do in terms of that. There is the limitation. So the best would be doing what I said, integrated soil fertility management, combining both organic and inorganic. The advantage of organic is that it builds up on other soil properties, organic matter, physical properties and all that. The advantage of inorganic, but the disadvantage is that the nutrient levels are very low, that they cannot be able to supply the whole season. So now that's where the inorganic comes in. You're able to give your crops the nutrients they need for that season. Segregation, the issue of segregation. So currently there are at least three blending facilities that I know in Kenya. To avoid the issue of segregation, what blenders do is to try and blend granules that are similar in size as much as possible. And there's a lot of testing in terms of trying to see, okay, if I blend these types of fertilizer, compatibility and the granule size and all those things, there are different ways of trying to test to see whether segregation will work with transportation, especially in our roads that are very rough. So by the time you come from maybe from Mombasa all the way to Western Kenya, there's a lot of bumpy roads you go through. So a lot of research goes into blending to ensure that the blends are uniform as possible. The challenge comes to when you're applying micronutrients, and micronutrients, there are ways of dealing with that. You can spray, you can coat the other granules with the micronutrients so that you don't have smaller granules into the blend. So there are ways of dealing with a segregation when it comes to blends. I think those are all the questions that I at least noted down. Yeah, if there's
I think Lillian has covered them well. Maybe we can try to finalize. We have a few minutes left, like maybe about less than 10. So we can try to finalize with Robert and Gabi if there are any questions that were poised towards your section, especially when it comes to the type of classes of the chemicals and generally they use by the farmer in terms of the systemic and how should they actually use these chemicals.
Robert, let me take the classes and you take the systemic. That's okay. For classes of pesticides, what the industry has done together with PCPB is that we are using the WHO, World Health Organization classification of 2004, where we are using on the label, the front panel, you'll see it's either blue with some pictograms, the small pictures that show where gloves, where this, where that. So there are 4 classes. There is starting with the most toxic, which is class 1, which is the red one. Then there is a second class, which is the yellow one, which is still toxic, but less than the red. Then there is the blue class, which is a bit better. And there is a green class, which more or less is minimum toxic, but people make a mistake and assume that it is not toxic. It is toxic. That's why it is there. That's why they are regulated by the government. For farmers, one thing I would advise, once you see these toxic classes, class 1, you should not spray as a farmer by yourself unless you're a large-scale farmer, because those are the real experts on class 1s. In fact, what PCPB has done is they've restricted the use. You won't get them being sold anywhere, just in in an uncontrolled environment, like in an agrochemical. You go and just ask for a class 1. No, this has to be either through an SSP or with a regulated farm where PCPB knows they know how to use them, because these are really toxic. Now, for the toxicity, what I'd advise farmers, look at the class in the front. Look at the pictograms. They show you clearly what you should be wearing when spraying these chemicals. Look at the pre-harvest interval inside the label. If a label does not have a pre-harvest interval and it is going in a food crop, that is your first question of whether it is a genuine label, because this guides you to know how toxic it is. And this helps you to know when you spray and when to harvest. So these are things they should look at. Something maybe as we go on now as a farmer, I'd want to challenge SOCA to bring on a government official so that we can also pose our challenges. One thing, we are having most of these challenges because we no longer have agricultural officers. As an industry, you cannot reach farmers everywhere, but agricultural officers are there. If the government is really serious on the Big 4 agenda, can they channel some money on agricultural officers? Zoning. I'm not sure if the government will ever do zoning. Sorry, I'm not a politician, but right now, maybe, I don't know, BBI could be our biggest agenda. If we can channel some funds towards this zoning, they can get private organizations to do this. I know there are organizations who can do this zoning. Can the government channel money there? Can they channel money to organizations like SOCA? I don't know, maybe you have capacity enough to do some of these things on behalf. Can they look at these organizations, channel money there? PCPB, KEFIS, can they channel enough money there? Now, next is Lillian, I won't spare you as well. You are telling us to get soil tested. Now, where do I get my soil tested? In my house? Where? Come up with solutions. Tell us, yes, get your soil tested. Test it here. That's all from me.
Yeah, before we go to Robert, there's a poll that is running. So you'll see a poll that is running. Please take maybe it's less than a minute. You can take less than a minute to answer that, to respond to that. And also, SOCA means Society for Crop Agribusiness Advisors, those who have made it possible for us to have this live today. Thank you so much. Welcome, Robert.
Okay,
so
I was on mute.
Yeah.
So I was on mute. So the question posed is about how about systemic pesticides and contact. So basically, this is more on how the product will work on the crop than how the farmer is going to use. This is a question on the mode of action as compared to how the farmer will use it. And I'm saying this because we have different types of modes of action. So for example, some products are systemic, meaning they move within the crop. Others are contact, in the sense that, for example, if you're spraying an insecticide that is majorly contact, it will specifically just go on and when it finds the pest in question, that's when the action will happen. If it was systemic, for example, it gets into the crop system, as the name suggests, in such a way that during the interaction of the pest with the crop, whether it is later when the pest comes on the crop, then it interacts with the pesticide. Now this tells you then how to use it. For example, if you use a contact pesticide, basically a contact pesticide, and the pest in question, is not there. It will only be affected when the product remains on the leaf, and if they don't come into contact with each other, then it's not going to be effective. So the farmer has the choice of saying, look, I will use a systemic pesticide because of the persistence and also the reach in various parts of the crop. So there are two ways in which a pesticide can move on a plant. One we call basipetal, so it goes from top and it's taken in the system downwards. And the other one is acropetal, where it's taken upwards. We also have local systemicity, whereby the pesticide only moves within the leaf, not absorbed and into the crop system, but within the leaf, if you can call it in a lateral way. So these methods would be easy to advise the farmer then, that if the farmer is expecting a surge in a pest, and that pest is not currently on the crop at that time, a systemic product would solve the problem. If we are talking about more or less the sucking pests, if you apply a systemic pesticide, then by the time the insect is coming to suck the sap, the pesticide is already in the system. Now, I've talked about the term persistence. So the more you go into systemic products, the more we are now entering the very shaky waters of safety, because that product mostly stays longer than the contact products on the crop, and therefore one has to know again from the label whether this product, what is the PHI of this product, so that then that will advise whether you are free to just say, I want to utilize the systemicity of the product. Someone said, if you want to hide something from an African, put it in a book. And sometimes people just don't read. The label is, the dogma of the label of the pesticide is read, read, read. Because most of this information we're talking about are in the primary panel. It is in Swahili and it is in English. And again, I allowed the, I congratulate the PCPB, because they do a very good job in making sure that we get the labels right. And so this information on whether a product is systemic, it goes inside, whether it's contact is on the label. Now, the mixing, I would touch a little bit about the mixing. Farmers are fond of taking a pesticide and mixing everything they want to use in one tank. It is true, it reduces on the time, and if you are using a tractor drone implement, it reduces on the what do you call it, compacting the soil, because then you don't keep going on the same farm many times. It saves money, it saves time, it saves the crop. But you have to know what you cannot mix and what you can mix. We have various formulations. Again, it is written on the label, some compatibility, some products that are compatible. I have to say that not everyone, and I think this is also a challenge to PCPB, to include as much as possible compatibility information, because even on the label, you find a label saying this product is not compatible with most pesticides. That is a very general and ambiguous statement, because when you sell it to a farmer, he's faced with 1,000 products. How will he know what is compatible and what is not compatible? So the point is, especially putting in a tank mix, this is for effectiveness. We use the acronym WELLS. So the wettable powders, then you agitate, then you put the liquids, then you put the emulsifiable concentrates, and then you put the soluble concentrates, or the soluble concentrates, or just the solutions. So you say the well. So especially because of the wettable powders or the wettable dry granules, you have to agitate. Immediately after putting these ones, you have to agitate. And then you include the liquids the liquids, and then you put the emulsifiable concentrate, the ones that are in oil, the oil form, and then the soluble concentrates. That is an easy way of remembering. If you have to put things together in a mambo jumbo kind of way, remember the acronym WHALES, and then you'll know the order in which you are to put them in the tank. There's a lot in that topic, but basically, I think you would not go so wrong if you started with the label. Yeah.
Thank you so much to our panelists and to Robert, Lillian, and Gabby. And thank you so much for SOCA for allowing us this time and hosting this live session. We are going to have more next week. We'll actually have specifically soil testing and a bit of discussion on seeds because it's part of the inputs. We are focusing on this because we understand that if we do not start from the soil and the inputs, then obviously our production is wrong. Garbage in, garbage out. So we have to start with what is immediate and then proceed all the way up to the post-harvest handling. So with this, I would like to give our panelists just 30 seconds to finalize. 30 seconds strictly, because we are over the time we were supposed to be on this live. Thank you. Robert, you can start.
Well,
Just
thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to share my 2 cents with our farmers. And I would like to say that to the farmers, really, from the bottom of my heart, I think if there is someone who can teach endurance and patience and all those good virtues we talk about, is the farmer. And I know we, as the input givers, we bombard you with all sorts of information with a view that mostly seems as we only want to sell. So please pardon us where we've come and become more a pain than to give a solution. We really want to be those that offer solutions, not only products for sale. And so we want to be bombarded with questions and also to be told when we sold products that are garbage. We want to be told on our faces. So, and please, let's be reading people. Let's read that label. Thank you very much.
Lillian.
So I'll take my 30 seconds to answer one question about regulation of fertilizers. Someone was asking, do we think the government should regulate fertilizers? And the answer is yes, they do regulate fertilizers. We have fertilizer standards that KEBS has, and we different experts are on that committee. And so yes, there is regulation of fertilizers in Kenya, and there are standards that you have to follow for you to be able to bring in fertilizer to Kenya. Finally, let me say thank you. It's been such a very informative discussion. Thanks to SOCA for this opportunity, and looking forward to many more other discussions. And finally, Gabriel Uri, there are many places you can test soils. There's Kefis, there's Calro, there's crop nuts. There are very many places. It's important for us to test our soils so that we can be able to manage our soils well.
Gabby.
First of all, I know it's not easy organizing such a forum for SOCA. We appreciate. Thank you for inviting me. I hope next time I can get invited as a farmer so that I can represent my fellow farmers properly. Yeah. On behalf of farmers, can one of the days we have someone from AAK, PCPB, or KEFIS, and we have a marketer like I will just mention like Twiga Foods, so that we can also know where we'll sell our produce and we can pose challenging questions to them. And lastly, I don't know if myself, I know how to contact SOCA. Do others know how to contact SOCA in case they have questions they need clarified? And also we need someone from the Ministry of Agriculture in the next one. Think about it. Thank you.
Okay, I'm sure the CEO has had this. Ricky, if you're hearing us, there's that request to have Ministry of Agriculture on board. And I'm sure we had even plans to have it, to have the Ministry of Agriculture and probably bring in another specialist, from PCPB, from AAK, just to get to have a feel of what these associations and other institutions are doing, what they're doing to help the farmer. And yeah, I'll give feedback, especially when it comes to the farmer. I think we need a farmer on the forum. Yeah, because here we are talking as scientists, we are talking as people in business, but we do not have the people who are actually buying these products. We might be this ourselves, we are buying, but we are not really the people who can talk about some of the challenges we are having. So I'm grateful for the evening, and we look forward to next Friday. Please tune in same time, 7 p.m. Hopefully we'll finish at 8 p.m. But sometimes agriculture, you know, you can talk the whole night about agriculture. So we get a bit overboard, but we'll try to stick to 1 hour or 1.5 hours at most. So looking forward to the next session. Have a good night. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Good night. Thanks.
Night.